Tubers. We are here today to give you a review of our Aventon Adventures. Now we have Aventon version 1 fat tire, the Adventure fat tire version 1. We didn't want to give you a video the first week we bought the things because when you first buy an e-bike, especially if you've never ridden one, you just fall in love with it no matter what the problems are, what the issues are, anything like that. So we tend to like to let it set in for a little bit, ride it, get some miles on it, learn some pros and cons so we can give it an accurate review. So we've had these now for, I want to say, about 18 months, and we've got just a little over 1,700 miles on these bikes. So I think that's a fair amount of mileage in order to give them a really good review. So let's get started. We're going to go over the specs. I'm not going to tell you exactly how to ride an e-bike or any of those details. We may make a video later about that. But what we're going to go over is the specs, and then the pros and cons, a little bit of the differences between the version 1 and the new version 2. So let's get started. First, we're going to talk about the motor. The Aventon Adventure has a rear hub motor. This is a 750 watt 48 volt brushless. It is a Bafang motor in the ones we have, and that 750 watts is sustained, and it is a rear hub as opposed to some e-bikes have motors in the crank assembly.
Oh yeah, right there, you're right.
Now this one has the fat tires. The good thing about fat tires, multi-terrain. You can go on pavement, you can go on concrete, you can go on gravel, you can go on dirt trails, you can even go on the sand. You kind of have to play with your PSI depending on where you're going to go. You can lower your PSI down as low as 5 PSI to do really loose stuff like sand, and you can bump it up real high when you're going on pavement. Now that all you're doing is changing your surface area so you get more traction when you need it or less when you don't need it. And the more PSI you have, you wouldn't want to ride low PSI on the pavement because you're creating a lot more drag and you're just going to wear out your battery a lot quicker. Now while we're at it, let's talk about the throttle. The throttle, there's a few complaints about this, but the throttle is placed over here on the left side. It is a thumb throttle, meaning you just use your thumb. Now this is an on-demand throttle, which means right after you hit it, you get some juice, and you can throttle from a complete stop. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the cons, because there are times it's difficult to do the throttle. The battery is enclosed inside of this tube, and if we go over to this side, you'll see that it's removable. You have a key that comes with every Aventon. The battery is removable. It's behind this plastic cover. Here is your on and off switch for your bike. You can remove the battery. We don't really remove the battery. I mean, if you have a particular security issue or something, that would be a good thing to do. Here's your port for charging. It's a little plastic grommet that fits in.
Rubber.
Yeah, a rubber grommet, and it seals it up from water intrusion, and that's how you charge it. The charger, of course, matches the battery, so it can charge in about 4.5 hours to 5 hours from pretty much empty to a full charge. Now when you first get your bike, you want to go through a conditioning process, which encompasses charging it for 12 hours, then riding it some, depleting the battery, charging another 12 hours, and doing that 3 times. You want 3 cycles of 12-hour charging. And after that, you can kind of get away with the 5-hour recharge whenever you ride your bike on a daily basis. Now the battery is 15 amp hour lithium ion, 48 volt. Like we said, the charger is the 3 amp 48 volt charger. And don't forget your conditioning cycles if you buy one. Now let's go look at the display. The display is marketed as a color display. It's it is color. It has blue, gray, and black and white. And that are your colors. You really don't get red. Now I'm not going to go through all the steps in the display, but as you can see, you have your battery percentage at the top, your miles per hour, and the big numbers in the middle. Then you have on the left here, you have your pedal assist level, which we'll talk about in a minute, but the version 1 has pedal assist 1 through 5. And then you have your odometer and your trip, which you can reset. And then there's a lot of different functions in your display. It'll display a lot of different things that we don't even mess with them. It's just too, it's not complicated, it's just information we don't really need. But it's a cool display. And the display does hook to an app, to an Aventon app, and we'll talk about that just a little bit more as we go along. Our bikes in particular have the Shimano 8-speed. It is a thumb down and a forefinger up. So here's your down, and over here on the back is your up. The derailleur is here. The one that comes with it is a Shimano Acera, I believe, or Acera, however you want to say that. This has a 12 tooth to a 32 tooth cassette on it back here. Now the brakes, we're going to look at those. These are hydraulic brakes. They are Zoom hydraulic brakes, and they have 180 millimeter rotor, and you may want to show that on your bike because it's on that side. The brake rotor is 150 millimeters, and that's a pretty good size because these bikes are heavy and it gives you more stopping power. Now you ask about range on these bikes. Aventon markets these as an average of 45 miles, and in our experience I would say that's pretty close. We ride in hilly terrain and we will typically get 35 to 40 miles, but if we're stretching it on flat terrain like at the beach or on a rail to trail that's flat, we end up getting as much as 50 miles. So 45 I'd say is a relatively accurate, maybe a bit on the high side of average for us. But it also depends on how much you're using the battery. You can ride these bikes throttle only by just pushing the throttle, and you're going to deplete your battery a lot quicker. But if you're using the pedal assist, you're pedaling and the bike is assisting you. That's what pedal assist means. It's assisting you with the electric motor. And with the 5 different levels, the higher the level, if you go to 5, you're going to be using more motor power. You're going to go faster. So you're going to deplete your battery faster. So you can see if you're on flat ground, you only need a pedal assist of 1 or 2. So your battery will last longer. But as you start climbing big hills and things, you're going to need that little extra power. Unless you're just extremely physically fit, like me. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, the bike comes as a Class 2. And in fact, I believe the sticker right here, you can barely see it, says Class 2. Now what does Class 2 mean? You can look that up, but Class 2 basically means on throttle only to go to 20 miles an hour. But using the app, you can connect to the bike, and through the app you can unlock the bike's top speed and make it a Class 3 e-bike, which gives it up to 28 miles an hour with pedal assist. So that's your key to doing that. Now we'll talk about a little issue with that I've heard about later on when we talk about the cons. The suspension, let's talk about that. This is a Zoom suspension on our bike. I've heard of these bikes coming with a different brand, but we really like the Zoom. It's an 80 millimeter travel. You actually have the capability to lock the suspension. Why would you want to do that? Well, if you're on smooth road and you don't want bouncing up and down a lot, that may increase drag. But really the reason we use the lock, you can turn this blue, let me turn the handlebar, you can turn this blue lever around all the way and you've locked your suspension and it won't go up and down. And we use that feature for when we're trailering the bikes. so they lock in tighter instead of putting a clamp around them and then they bounce up and down as you're traveling. The suspension is adjustable. On the other side, there's a brown adjustment where you can dampen your suspension, and that just means change the softness, hardness. You really got to play with it a little bit to figure out where you like to be, and then just leave it there is what I recommend. And you may change it for different scenarios, different situations, different road surfaces or travel surfaces, whatever you want to say. Now the frame.
Hello, airplane.
But you may want to change your suspension a little bit for dampen it for different terrains. Now the frame, let's move on and talk about the frame. The frame is aluminum alloy. It's rated for 400 pounds. Used to be they marketed it as 350. So 350 pound to 400 pound rider and gear is the max weight limit. I would tend to stick on the lower side of that if I were you. But we'll talk about that again a little bit later. The bikes are heavy. That is a little bit of a concern. That's a negative to most e-bikes. Your battery weighs a good deal, and because the frames have to be made beefier to contain the battery or to hold the battery, and then you've got all of the components that are heavier duty than a standard lightweight bike, the bike is going to weigh more. These are right around 72 pounds, and as you put more accessories on and everything like that, you get up into the 75, 76 pound range for the bikes. So they're not super easy if you need to lift them and carry them. And the other negative is if you run out of battery and you have to pedal without any pedal assist, I hope your trip is all downhill or flat, because they get really hard to pedal. So make sure you keep an eye, learn your own individual bike and how it reacts to terrains and things like that, and pedal assist use and all that, so you know how much battery you got left. What we tend to do is when we're riding on a trip, we're going on a trail or something like that, or out on the highway or down here along the beach road, we watch our battery, and when it gets close to 50%, we know it's time to turn around and head back to our vehicle or our house.
And where do we see the battery, dear?
The battery percentage is right here on top of the display, as we showed earlier, in the blue.
Thank you.
Now, one thing I failed to mention on the suspension, these bikes are considered hardtail. If you don't know what that means, that just means there's no suspension in the tail end or the rear. You don't have a spring suspension, you don't have any type of any type of suspension at all. It's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. So with that said, these bikes come with sort of a cruiser style cushion seat. We weren't exactly satisfied with the comfort level of the seat that comes with it. It is a seat that's made by Velo, I believe. It's a quick, of course, these are quick release. You have just the lever right here. I've got my tire inflator, but this lever just pops, seat comes right out, this lever here. It's a Velo seat made by Aventon. It's cushiony, but we bought the extra seat cushion. We bought the Soleil Royale video gel seat. Gives us extra comfort, but if you want more comfort than what this cushion cover does, or the seat, you can always opt for a suspension seat post, which will help you a lot. And that probably is going to be our next purchase. Yes. And another note on the seat, this is just
measure correctly.
Well, measure correctly, but another note on the seat, yeah, make sure your height is set correctly for your inseam and we'll talk about that in another video, but when we're talking about setting up your bike and riding, how to ride an e-bike. But the seat that comes with it, the Velo seat by, or a Aventon seat by Velo, it's black. The gel seat cover we bought is black. Well, when you put this bike on the back of your car and you drive 3 hours in the mornings or early afternoon, and then you park somewhere and you take your bike off to get riding, and then you sit down, you get a cooked booty. Hey YouTubers, we are stopping our review video of the Aventon Aventure version 1 right here, because when we were filming, of all the features and everything, we got a little carried away and our video got too long. So this is the conclusion of part 1, but stay tuned for part 2. I'm going to put a card here, or maybe here, or maybe there, or maybe here. Thanks for watching.